Elephant in the room is a saying used to describe a problem everyone ignores. A problem so overwhelming that it is easier for people to just look away and not face the reality. The phrase is also used to describe issues that involve social taboos, such as race, religion, homosexuality, mental illness, or even suicide. But in the grander scale of things, that idiom can be applied to everyone. There'll always be someone or something we will choose to ignore or disregard just so that we can postpone confronting the problem. Now, the first recorded usage of this metaphor can be traced back to 1814 in the work of a Russian poet and fabulist, Ivan Andreevich Krylov, called The Inquisitive Man. In it, Krylov describes a man who goes to a museum and sees all sorts of things and tiny details, but fails to notice an elephant in the middle of the room. Later, Dostoevsky used the metaphor in his novel Demons by saying Belinsky was just like Krylov's inquisitive man who didn't notice the elephant in the museum. In the world of film, the metaphor was first used in 1989 by a particular British director, Alan Clarke, when he made his last short film for television called Elephant. The idea for the film came from his friend, colleague, and producer, Danny Boyle. At the time, the Northern Ireland conflict was in full swing. It started in the 1960s and ended in 1998 with the Belfast Agreement. The conflict was primarily political and nationalistic, fueled by historical events in which over 50,000 people lost their lives. The film was broadcasted on BBC Two on the screens of people all over Britain. It showed 18 murders based on true events of that time. It has little to no dialogue, music, or traditional film plot. We don't find out anything about the victims or the killers. A murder happens and then we move on to the next one. With his film, Alan Clarke succeeded in bringing the elephant back in front of the people who kept avoiding it every day. If TV is how people learn about the world, then Alan Clarke's move was the perfect way of reminding them of the horrific reality that was playing out behind their safe walls. As expected, it sparked a lot of controversy and many debates and discussions on the topic, which was avoided just days before. After watching the film, Alan's colleague David Leland wrote about the effect it had on him by saying, "It was like a gut reaction which made him more aware than ever of what was going on." Many years later, on another continent even more famous for its tendencies to cover up and ignore important social issues, some other director made his own version of the aforementioned film. Gus Van Sant, who began his filmmaking career in 1986 with the little indie film Mala Noche, just 3 years before Alan Clarke's film came out. It wasn't until 1997 that Gus broke into the mainstream with his Oscar-winning film Good Will Hunting. After his success, everyone expected him to stay in the more mainstream realm, but his decisions were more independent than ever. In 1998, he experimented with form in a shot-to-shot remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. After the backlash from the critics and the audiences alike, he decided to make a film trilogy centered on real-life deaths, now famous as his Death Trilogy. All three films share a very unique and minimalistic approach to form. The first one, Jerry, starring Matt Damon and Casey Affleck as two friends who get lost in a desert in which only one of them survives. The second film in the trilogy is Elephant, which we will get to in a second, and the third one being Last Days, which literally chronicles the last days of a depressed rock singer played brilliantly by Michael Pitt, inspired by Nirvana's frontman Kurt Cobain before his inevitable suicide. Now, in 2002, actress and producer Diane Keaton, together with HBO Films, approached Gus with the idea of making a film inspired by the 1999 massacre in the Columbine High School in which two armed students killed 12 people. Gus liked the idea of filming it in his hometown of Portland. The actors in the film were regular teenagers and amateur actors who went to the school. Gus's inspiration was Clarke's 1989 film of the same name, and decided that it was best to film it in a similar minimalistic style. In 2002, a famous American journalist and documentarian, Michael Moore, released Bowling for Columbine, in which he investigated the possible causes of the massacre. His film was very successful and even won an Oscar for Best Documentary Feature at the 2003 Academy Awards. Meanwhile, Gus and the producers at HBO weren't interested in making a story directly about Columbine, but wanted to make something that had the effect of Clarke's 1989 film. Journalists often have this tendency of turning these kinds of cases and people that were affected by these events into numbers and statistics. But as Van Sant would say, we should never forget the reality of the deafening silence just before the storm. In mainstream films, we're used to seeing scenes in which something happens that informs us about the characters and the story. Instead of it being a coherent story, Gus decided to film it as an opera, or a poem about what happened.
I mean, I think also it acts as a song about such an event, an opera of sorts.
While watching it, you can definitely feel his intentions. For example, when a character in a film moves from one place to another, the scenes are cut so that the monotonous parts of people walking don't bore the audience. Gus Van Sant thinks these moments of characters walking towards the destination are as important as the destination itself, and films it in a way where it gives you the freedom to reflect on the things that are happening inside the film and inside yourself. The heartbreaking part about it is that most of these roads were cut short when the killers arrived. The film follows a couple of high school students on the day of the massacre. We see many characters walk down the hallways of the school, girls in the bathroom, students reading in the library, and jocks who are playing football outside. All those regular school activities will be disrupted when Alex and Eric, their two peers, come to the school with weapons. This film doesn't have a traditional 3-act structure where we would get to know the students and form a connection with them. We follow them just a couple of hours before the gruesome killing spree begins. I have a feeling that in the hands of a lesser skilled director, the film would introduce us to the characters in a sentimental and manipulative way. But Van Sant, on the other hand, makes it clear that he wants us, the audience, to want to meet and connect with the characters. But that opportunity is taken away because ignoring the elephant in the room reached its peak. It crossed all the lines and became an irreparable mistake. In his review of the film, Roger Ebert wrote, "Van Sant's Elephant is a violent film in a sense that many innocent people are shot dead, but it isn't violent in the way it presents those deaths. There is no pumped-up style, no lingering, no release, and no climax. Just implacable, poker-faced, flat, uninfected death." Truffaut said that it was hard to make an anti-war film because war was exciting even if you were against it. Van Sant has made an anti-violence film by draining violence of energy, purpose, glamour, reward, and social context. It just happens. I doubt that Elephant will ever inspire anyone to copy what they see on the screen. Much more than the insipid message movies shown in social studies classes, it might inspire useful discussion and soul-searching among high school students. When a film shows something or someone as a cause of an event like Columbine, there is a danger that the regular movie audience will take that for granted and ignore the much bigger picture. But if a film shows the event that happened just as it did, without explanation or much context, it literally asks for the audience's involvement in the topic that is being discussed. Van Sant respects his audience and counts that they won't be satisfied with what they see, which is chaos and violence, and that their instinct, of which Leland spoke of, will make us think about several options before coming to a conclusion. It is an abstract way of engaging an audience in this controversial topic. Abstract films have a very obvious and understandable flaw for most people, which is their refusal to give us any answers or conclusions. Lack of information can be a very painful experience for audiences, which makes them all the less popular. Refusing to see things the way that they are can only make a problem bigger and harder to handle. After that happens, the problems stop being just ours, but ones that affect everyone around. Foolish is the one who thinks that the elephant in the room will forever stay there. It will grow to be the elephant in the house, and later in the street, even in the city square, and it will continue to grow until it can cast its shadow on every inch of our community, until ignoring the obvious becomes impossible.